Welcome back to Podcast on the Brink, Monday, July 10th. News of the day this morning on Twitter. Our old friend, Tyler Tachman, is leaving Bloomington, so I wanted to have him on the show. But before we dive into all that, we're going to talk some IU. But Tyler, give everyone that's not on Twitter or Threads or wherever else you've announced this the news. Where are you headed? And just tell us a little bit about the opportunity that you're going to have next moving forward.
Well, first I want to say it must be a slow news day for for us to be talking about this. It's really in the deep days of summer off season. But I'm going to the Des Moines Register. I've accepted a position as the Iowa Hawkeyes beat reporter, so I'll be covering focused on Iowa football and Iowa men's basketball. So I'm really looking forward to the opportunity, and obviously love my time at IU. So yeah.
So before we talk some of the last 3 years and your time on the IU beat, I wanted to kind of look forward. IU basketball is what we talk on this podcast, no IU football, which you're going to be going to a place where I think football and basketball are both kind of viewed maybe as equals, or, fans are as you're shaking your head. No, is there a clear pecking order at Iowa football higher than basketball?
Based on my understanding, football is above. Obviously, Iowa basketball has had success recently, but I think football is pretty much the focus, as long as it's going on. So
there you go. So you're teaching me something. Anyway, this podcast specifically is IU basketball only. And so I just, you've obviously been at the Indy Star for a little bit less than a year. I think, you wrote for us last summer and then you kind of left for the Star last fall, but it was a building season last year for Mike Woodson. Obviously getting back to the tournament for a second straight year was important for the program. And it seems like the expectation going into year 3, based on what's happened so far this offseason with the roster and the turnover, is another NCAA tournament appearance. What's just your impression of the Mike Woodson era through the first 2 years, and where the program stands and what the outlook is for the future as you depart the beat?
I think that his first 2 seasons as IU's head coach, there's been progress, and I don't think that's disputable. Now, what is disputable is, was there enough progress? That's what people kind of would argue over, but not making the tournament all those years under Archie Miller. Mike Woodson gets him back in his first season. They go to the first 4, beat Wyoming, then lose to St. Mary's. But then this past season, IU's a 4 seed, and gets to the round of 32, so they get a round further than they did the previous season. So I think we're seeing the building blocks of like trying to get the program back to where people want it to be. And I think this upcoming season is like a huge turning point in terms of, can Mike Woodson continue to take steps forward, or will there be regression? Because Indiana has so many pieces that they've lost this offseason. Trace Jackson-Davis, Jalen Hood-Schifino, Race Thompson, Miller Kopp, Tamar Bates, Jordan Geronimo, all guys that were really, or to varying degrees, but if you look at a guy like Trace and Jalen, who were like really key in what Indiana was doing, losing those guys. So you have a lot of new faces. Indiana did really good work in the transfer portal, getting Khalil Ware, then in recruiting and kind of that short span recruiting with Mackenzie Mbako. My thoughts on this specific team is that they have a higher ceiling than last season's team. I think they have more talent. I think they're more fit for the modern game, more versatility, more length, more athleticism. But I think their floor is considerably lower because you don't have a Trace Jackson-Davis to fall back on when all things go wrong. You have a lot of guys that are unproven at the college level. They have a lot of talent, but they're unproven at the college level. like Kalel Ware, who came in as a highly touted guy. First season at Oregon didn't really go how people expected. Can he be the guy that like people expected him to be out of high school? Can Mackenzie Mbako, like in his first season, be a dude as a freshman? Can Malik Renew take a necessary step forward and not foul and be consistent? So obviously you have Xavier Johnson, Trey Galloway kind of returning core guys. But to me, it's just a lot of uncertainty of like guys needing to take steps up. So like I said, I think this group is more talented than last season. I think they can be better than last season, but I think they can also be considerably worse if things don't come together.
What do you think IU fans should be most concerned about going into next season in terms of the roster? What's the biggest, you talk about that floor being lower, not having Trace to fall back on, but it still feels like to me that they might be one player away just in terms of a wing creator, shot maker, that's just not there. I mean, obviously Trey Galloway, the expectation is going to be that he's going to start because he started last season. He's returning as a fourth-year player. But it just feels to me that maybe they're one player away. Would you agree with that? And do you think that's kind of the reason that there should be a little bit of uncertainty in terms of this team reaching its goals next season? Because it's a much different look for the team going into next year, having Mbako, Ware, and Renew playing together. I just think there's going to take some time to figure that all out. And it feels like to me that if they had maybe a more dynamic guard that could go create a shot and get buckets from the perimeter, they may be a little bit more well suited to reach their potential.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I look at it kind of as there's guys that you really want to take a step up and like fill that role. But I know IU fans might not like to hear this, but my biggest concern going into the season is shooting, because the shooting troubles have been well documented, and last season was a considerable step forward. But now a lot of the guys that help make that happen are gone. Miller Kopp is gone. Tamar Bates is gone. Jalen Hood-Schifino, who didn't really like shoot at a really high percentage, but he made threes. He's gone. So really Trey Galloway is your best 3-point shooter returning. And behind that, there's a lot of uncertainty. That's where, and this is where I look at like some really X factors of like, can Caleb Banks be that kind of wing that can take a considerable step forward? I wrote about CJ Gunn over the summer. Like, can he be a guy that fills that shooting void? I think, and beyond that, it's like, can Kalel Ware and Malik Renew like shoot consistently from deep? Like, Malik Renew only took a handful of threes this past season. And the issue is, and can Mackenzie Mbako, can he shoot consistently? Like you basically don't want guys that are going to be high volume, low percentage, like shooters from deep. And because of the way that Indiana is built with kind of the size and versatility, if the versatility isn't there, that's an issue, because then you have potentially Malik Renew and Kalel Ware. If they're not shooting well, then you're looking at sort of the same type of deal where you have a couple of big men that aren't really threats on the perimeter. And I think with the modern game, you need to have at least basically 4 guys on the court at all time that can make a shot from deep. And we saw with last season how Race Thompson tried to be that guy, but he wasn't able to shoot efficiently enough from deep to kind of be that threat. So I think you need, and this might be oversimplifying things, you need the guys that are supposed to be versatile to be versatile. Otherwise, you run into the same issue of like, it probably wouldn't be this drastic, but like when IU ran out the Joey Brunk, Trace Jackson Davis, and Justin Smith lineups from like a few years ago when Trace was a freshman, where you have like 3 guys that are just not really threats to shoot. And I'm not saying that this is what it would be, but you need the guys that are versatile to be versatile, or else you're going to deal with the same issues that Indiana has kind of dealt with, which is not enough room in the lane, not fit for the modern game, all that type of stuff.
So last thing, just kind of about the future. Do you know, Mike Woodson, just what he's brought to this program, what I've kind of said, the biggest compliment I can give him so far is just stability. I mean, maybe they have not reached the Elite Eight, the Sweet 16s, the Final Fours that IU fans covet, but coming from Archie Miller, who couldn't even get in the tournament in 4 years, which we'll give him a pass on the 1 year. He would have made the tournament, but it was obviously canceled due to COVID. But he was obviously dismissed for his lack of being able to kind of get the program back in the tournament consistently. So Mike Woodson, in terms of on-floor results, I don't think there's been anything when you look at it historically with the program, anything spectacular. He's not won a Big Ten title. He's not gone past the first weekend of the NCAA tournament, but coming from where they were to where they are now, it represents a step forward. Do you agree with just with that in terms of what the stability piece being maybe the most impressive thing that Woodson's brought so far? And what do you think ultimately, you'll be watching this from afar now, as someone that covered the program his first couple of years, where do you think ultimately this program can get under him? Do you see this being a situation where he's going to break through? I mean, I know I'm asking you to kind of look into the crystal ball, but and predict the future, but it also seems like he's kind of put that foundation in place. So he's got everything there. He's got a good coaching staff. He's done a pretty good job recruiting. The next step is obviously him kind of pushing through and having a deeper tournament run. Do you see that as being something that's attainable for him in the future?
I think it is attainable, but I think the more like the way that things are going right now, the more realistic path I see is that he is getting the program closer to where people want it to be. Because excuse me, obviously under Archie Miller, things progressed and it was far from the program, standards that it used to be. I think if anything, Mike Woodson, we don't know how much longer he's going to be coaching, so we don't really know how much time he had. If he was younger, I think that I would definitely say his trajectory would be to take the program and the way things were going to break through and all this. But he's an older guy. He's coached a long time. We don't know how much the timetable actually is. So that makes me a little bit more hesitant to say they're going to break through and get to a Final Four or whatever. I think it's possible, but I think the more realistic outcome is that his legacy as IU's coach will be getting it back on the right path and handing the baton to someone else to get it back to that elite status and to make that Final Four run as almost like as a connector in terms of being able to kind of breathe life into the program, get it back moving in the right direction. And I think one thing about him as well is like just his personality. And I think we've seen it a lot, like covering him and just the things he'll say and stuff. Like, I think his personality fits with like what IU needed at head coach. Like, just the fact that he's like a very easygoing guy. Like, he just says funny, like he says kind of whatever he wants. Like, he doesn't really have a filter. He's very approachable, like easygoing. So I think that part of it too, of like, and this is not, Archie Miller is who he is. And like, this is, I'm not hitting him for his personality because that's just who we all like are who we are personality wise. And I don't think his personality like just fit with what the program needed. And like being a guy that's going to be like almost the face of the state and to a certain extent. And like Mike Woodson, he seems comfortable in that. And he's also like, dude coached the New York Knicks. So like he's used to being in the spotlight. He's used to having that attention. He just seems like someone that's like really comfortable in his own skin and like what all he brings. So I think that part of it too, and just the way he's engaged with the fan base and kind of connected various ages of the fan base, I think that's important, kind of in a less like tangibly part of it. I think that's important of what he's done as well.
So I want to reflect back on the time you spent on the beat. Obviously, 2 years of covering the team with Inside the Hall, and you covered last season for the Indy Star. When you came to, your freshman year, I don't believe you covered basketball. I know you did some stuff at the IDS. I believe you covered wrestling, and I'm not sure what else. You can remind me if I'm missing anything there. But when you came to IU, obviously you're from Chapel Hill, so you followed a program in North Carolina that's, near the top of the heap in terms of tradition in college basketball. And I know you were really excited to cover IU basketball, just kind of see what the tradition and the prestige and all that was all about. What were kind of your expectations coming in to Indiana in terms of the basketball program? What did you kind of know about it from afar? And then now that you've kind of covered it for 3 seasons and you're leaving, did the expectations of what you had coming in kind of meet that, or what were things different than maybe what you viewed it coming in?
Yeah, so I covered my freshman year. I made a couple of spot starts, I guess you could call them, for the IDS. So like I covered a couple of games, covered a couple of basketball games for the IDS as a freshman. And actually, the very first game I covered, um, it's gonna sound weird, but I was in the bathroom at assembly, like at a urinal, whatever, doing my thing. And my belt broke, like the belt to hold my, oh no, sorry. The button popped off of my like pants. And so I was like freaking out. I was like, my first game I've ever covered, like I'm gonna be like holding my pants up, like this is gonna look so bad. But thankfully I had a belt. So I was able to, the belt was able to secure my pants, all that. I was chilling. But man, that I was, for a second there, I was like, this is just a horrible first way to get off on the beat. But it ended up being all right. So I believe that game was against Troy in 2019. So anyhow, I don't even remember the question, but so my expectations, I mean, I knew that Indiana people love basketball. I remember like watching when North Carolina would come to IU in the Big Ten ACC challenge, and just like people and like hearing that it was just going to be a ridiculous atmosphere and that like it's insanely hard to win there. And I remember watching the games and it just like looking like one big party. So like I knew of the just of the passion. But being here for 4 years, like it definitely blew me out of the water of what I thought, because I had that kind of in my head, but I didn't really know like the extent to which people really love basketball. And like the first time I was actually in Bloomington, I was at a game. It was Romeo Langford, I believe, the year he was here at IU, and IU played Michigan at home, and they just got shellacked. The shot clock wasn't working. Chuck Crabb was like announcing the shot clock over the loudspeaker, and I remember for the first time watching the Martha the Mop Lady video, I was like, "What is this?" Like I was so confused. I was like, "What is this?" But no, I think the passion for basketball, the passion for the team, like it blew out any expectations I could have had. And I think it really grew my love for basketball personally too, because I always really liked basketball, but just like being around people that love the sport so much. And like I would spend a lot of time like on campus, like playing pickup games and like but like basketball, I think I came in really liking basketball, and I think now like leaving IU, I love it. I love basketball. I've become more of a junkie, and just everything about the program. I don't know, like there's just so much love, so much passion. Like you can feel it going to games, on social media. Like people care a lot. And I think that that's a real blessing, because a lot of programs kind of wish they had that passion. And I think that's one thing of like people talking about like just basically the whole trajectory of Indiana's program and all that. But like the thing that I don't think has lost is just like how much people care. Like it's more than just a program. It's like part of a culture. It's part of your family. It's something that's passed down. So it's something that's like ingrained in the state, I think.
Yeah, I mean, if the program's success matched kind of the fan base's, commitment to cheering on the program and watching the program, they'd be as successful as any program in the country. Because you look at the results over, the last, really since the early 90s, it's not been in terms of results, a blue blood program, but the fans and the people continue to support it in a way that's really, I mean, in terms of the Big Ten, there's nobody that really, in my mind, supports their program as much as Indiana. And you look around the country, I mean, you could probably say programs like Kansas, Kentucky, North Carolina, Duke, Villanova, maybe, you know, they really supported their program when they had all that top line success. Michigan State's up there, but you know, Indiana, when it's a big game and there's a big atmosphere, there's no place like it. One of the things that really impressed me about you just working with you was, you know, you kind of from the beginning when we started working together, you kind of expressed that you wanted to kind of tell stories like beyond the court and like get to know people on a more personal level. And that was a thing I think a lot of people inside the hall really appreciated was kind of the more in-depth features and things that you did while you're on the beat. Looking back just on your time when you wrote for us, what was there any story or stories that really stood out that you remember where you got to know a player or a parent or something like that on a more personal level and really enjoyed telling that? I know you won a USBWA award as a sophomore in college, which is something that, you know, I was really just impressed me for the work you did on that story. But just and not to, I don't want you to talk, make you feel uncomfortable, like talking to yourself and pumping you up, but I'm giving you a compliment here to say like these stories, like there's not a lot of people on the beat that were doing stuff like this. So I'm just kind of curious from your standpoint, if there's a story or two that you remember reporting and doing that you really kind of feel like stood out in terms of just the information that you were able to get or just the relationship you were able to build with the player or the family.
I think the one you mentioned, the one on Armand Franklin that I did my sophomore year, and then the one on Xavier Johnson and kind of all the sacrifices his parents made to, you know, help him get where he is. I think those were probably two that stood out to me. And I guess like for me, just why that's so important, like, because I feel like it's just kind of like who I am. Like I would describe myself, and I've described myself in the past as like I'm an introvert, but I love connecting. Like I love connecting with people, and I just feel like I don't know, man. The world is just a complicated place, and like people deal with challenges, and you know, like I've dealt with my own personal challenges, and a way that like we can we can use each other as resources. Like we can learn from each other. Like we're all in this kind of together. And I know like, you know, there's a lot of negativity and all this type of stuff, but I feel like just being able to like connect people and like just learn about other people, because it's helped me in my life when I talk to someone about their life or whatever. Like you just learn more as a person, like how to deal with hurdles and challenges. And like, so telling those type of stories for me is like, it's my kind of way of like trying to connect people, trying to like act as a way, like just try to make the world like a better place in like the little way that I can. And I know that like those stories aren't gonna like probably single-handedly like change someone's life. Like I don't have a magic wand where I can do that. I don't think there is a magic wand. If there was, I probably would try to find it. But you know, it can act as a little way to kind of like, I believe in the butterfly effect, where it's like something small in your life, you know, it changes the way you see something, and then that changes how you treat someone else, and then they are able to open their eyes to other things. And I don't know, it's part of the job that I feel like is really important. And it's like not just part of the job, that it's like it's more of just life and interacting with other people, learning about other people. Like I don't view it as much as like part of the job as it is like that's what I'm like, it's my contribution just to try to like put people's stories out there and, you know, help others in the way that I can.
I think it's important too for like the fan base, not just in Indiana, but everywhere. And I've always said this, like the more fans can connect with players and feel like they know them as people. I'm not talking about their personal life, but if you have perspective on somebody and the background that they came from or what they're going through, then when you're upset that somebody shot 2 for 10 in a game and lost, then you have like this frame of reference of like, well, this person's just another human being like I am. Like you have a bad day at work, or you have a day where something's going on in your life where you didn't have a good day. I mean, the players are people too, and I think for a long time, they were just looked at as somebody that's going to go out there and help Indiana win games. And while there's a lot of pressure on them to perform, and obviously with NIL now, I think there's even more pressure because people can say like, well, you're making hundreds of thousands of dollars, you should have played better and things like that. But I also think it's important that you have the perspective of these are just college kids that are out there doing something that they love. So I think one of the important things that kind of stood out for me, like of what you did, was just kind of giving people maybe a closer look at somebody as a person, and kind of how they came to be who they are today. So I think that was, when I look back on it, I think that was one of the more valuable contributions that you had while you were on the beat.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I'll take it a step further in saying, like, when you're saying, and that is definitely like what I try to do in terms of telling the story behind the player, but I feel like it's more than that of like you're talking about a human, like another person. Like it's not just really about sports. It's like just another person that you're learning about, whether they play sports or not. And I mean, just, yeah, things can be complex. And I think we kind of saw this come to light a little bit because when like Trace Jackson Davis posted that note that he had gotten during the season, that was pretty critical. I'll just kind of leave it at that. But like, and especially with social media too, of like how I think social media is good in that it does allow people to connect, but it's bad in that like it dehumanizes people and it makes it look like a profile or whatever. Like you don't actually understand that like there's another person behind, getting the message or whatever. So yeah, I think it's just important, like just in, and not even in just like fan bases learning about players, but I would just encourage people to like learn about your neighbor or just other, you don't know what like people are going through and what they're dealing with. So like just being like generally just being more open and like accepting and just having that like kind of angle of being showing empathy and stuff like that.
So I want to look forward. Obviously, you told us at the top of the show that you're going to the Des Moines Register, but you're actually going to be in Iowa City. You've told me that you've already rewatched the entire 2022 Iowa football season, which better you to do that than me because I wouldn't last through a quarter, which, admittedly, I'm not a college football fan, but that kind of speaks to me like you're going in like you did that, I think, before you started with Inside the Hall. Like you watched old IU basketball games from the seasons before and like you had a good perspective. So I think that kind of speaks to the preparation. But so like what you're going into Iowa, which you've now told me, breaking news, I didn't know this, like football is kind of the king there, but I think that people still care about basketball. What like what are you most excited about for this new job? I mean, it's going to be different than Bloomington, where football was just kind of something to pass the time before basketball started. You're going in with, a program that I don't know, even you tell me what the expectations is for Iowa football going in next season. But what are you most looking forward to about this new challenge that you're going to take on starting 7 days from today?
Yeah, 7 days I start. Yeah, so the first game of the 2022 season, Iowa football, they score 7 points and they didn't score a touchdown. So they had 2 safeties and a field goal. So that was kind of a interesting introduction to it all. But I think what I'm looking forward to the opportunity is just that, like, for people that didn't know, like basically the entire time that I covered IU, like I wasn't doing it full time. Like I was a student basically the entire time up until I graduated in May. So like I was juggling a lot of different things, and I think I'm excited of just being able to like just do this, like of this being my main like I think it was my main focus before. Like I obviously had to get my schoolwork done, but like not having to worry about the school aspect of it and just like really digging in and being able to build relationships and build a rapport with the fan base and learn about other people. And that's what I'm looking forward to of it. And honestly, it's kind of nice because it's Iowa, so I've kind of watched them to a certain extent. So it's not like I'm going to Nevada or, New Mexico State where I like have no idea about the program. Like I already had kind of a general background. So that helps. And I'm also just looking forward to like being able to, I guess, like I said, just sink my teeth in and like really feel like I can establish myself and tell some of those stories at Iowa. And as far as expectations, like I think the expectation for Iowa football this season is to win the Big Ten West, which would put them back in the Big Ten championship. Obviously, this is the last year of divisions, but this is kind of a golden opportunity for them where last season all they had to do in the last game of the regular season was beat Nebraska and they would be in the Big Ten championship. They ended up losing that game. This season, before the divisions go away and Iowa and everyone in the West kind of loses their advantage of not having to be in the same division as Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State. Like this is a really golden opportunity for them to get back to the Big Ten title before it's going to get more difficult in the coming seasons. But as far as like football kind of being the main focus, like I don't really see it as much different. I'm excited for that part of it of like kind of seeing the football side of things, but I feel like it'll be similar to IU and like it's a college town. It's a college athletics that people care deeply about, that they're very passionate about. So, whether it's football or basketball, I view it as sort of like the same fabric as IU, and that, just like I said, it's college. And one thing I do like covering about college is that like I feel like it's a very interesting time in people's lives. They're learning a lot about themselves, who they are, a transition, living on their own. Like, and I feel like because I just went through that and I'm, basically the same age, like I am able to kind of connect with them on that. And so yeah, I guess those are kind of my thoughts in a rambled way.
Well, I would say this is goodbye, but Tyler, I'm sure we'll have you on again probably this coming basketball season because Iowa and Indiana are going to play. They're not going to play at Carver Hawkeye. They're going to play at Assembly Hall. So it'll be like your homecoming game.
Man, I'm excited. I'm excited
to come back to Assembly Hall, but I'm sure we'll have you on podcast on the brink again to talk about maybe even Big Ten hoops at large at some point. But I just want to say, we're good friends. We talk all the time. We text all the time. We're going to stay in contact the same as we had before, but just like before when you left to work at the Indy Star, like I'm thrilled, excited for you to take the next step. Like you've more than earned your opportunity. I mean, you've worked as hard as anybody on this beat, and I'm just excited to see what you're able to do. Like when you are able to work on something full time. So, like I said, it's not goodbye because you're going to be back on the show. We're going to still remain in contact, and I hope IU fans will continue to follow you, read your work, and check out the things that you're going to do in Iowa City. Yeah,
no, I appreciate it. And I thank you for the opportunity you gave me starting at, Inside the Hall before my sophomore year started. And like, obviously it was just college was like kind of an odd experience, I guess. And it wasn't what I expected looking at it from a big picture view, because like I got sent home my freshman year because of COVID. My sophomore year was almost all online and covering like a COVID season where Archie Miller got fired following that. And then Mike Woodson comes in, and like I'd say my senior year was probably like the most normal like kind of college experience I had. But I know I thank you for the opportunities you gave me. Like I thank all the IU fans that read my stuff and engaged. I definitely appreciate that. And if I can help anyone, just reach out to me. And I think I've thought about this a little bit, and like the thing that makes Bloomington special and like a place special, I think, is not just a place. Like obviously it is, part of it is like the physical place, but it's not just a place. I think it's also like the experiences you have at that place, the people you meet at that place, and like the people that I've met at IU, and experiences that I've had, like the highs, the lows. I think it's made this place special, and it's somewhere that I'll always remember. And like, yeah, I don't want it to make it sound like a sappy goodbye, because like I'm not gonna be far away, and like I get to stay in the Big Ten, so like I'll be around and stuff. But yeah, just everyone that supported me, I appreciate it, and hope I could help you in some way or provide some insight or something like that.
Absolutely, Tyler. It's been fun, kind of reminiscing on some of the old times, talking about the future of IU basketball. Thanks everybody listening excuse me, to another episode of Podcast on the Brink. If you enjoy the show, please leave us a rating or review on Apple Podcasts. Leave us a rating on Spotify, and we'll be back soon with another episode of Podcast on the Brink.